I get asked a lot of questions about what's the most important or easiest, quickest way for salespeople to improve their results. And based on what we see in the sales gym, because we do a lot of research, we watch, practice, and observe salespeople in live, simulated, and practice sessions actually selling thousands of times each year. I think when it comes down to the three mistakes that we observe, the first one is just an inability to ask great questions, listen, learn, and patiently stay in that discovery step until they get the full picture of what the prospect or the client's problem is. That is really difficult for a lot of salespeople to do. They'll start talking about their product or their service way too early in the process, or they'll ask a good question or two, and then the customer or the prospect will say something that indicates an opportunity, and they'll immediately just jump on it like a shark where there's bait in the water. And as such, they miss bigger opportunities that they could uncover if they would just listen more. So I think that ability to work on questions is really critical. And I'm just absolutely amazed at how many organizations they don't practice with their people to get better. I think about the way a sports team works with their athletes. Just consider what would happen if a sports coach, for instance, an NFL coach, was to send his receivers out there and they had this habit of just tripping every fourth or fifth step. Or sending a boxer out with one hand tied behind his back. Sending salespeople out on sales calls that are not effective at questioning is really just like that. There's such a low likelihood that they're going to succeed, and it just creates expense and frustration for everybody. So that's the first one, questions that are just not that effective. The second one is I'm continually shocked by how many salespeople can't answer a simple question like, what is it that makes your product or your services better than your competitors? Especially when they're talking specifically to a customer that they've listened to, heard their needs, and they should understand how to tailor it. But most salespeople can't do it. And this is another thing that organizations don't spend nearly enough time practicing with their salespeople. So it's that inability to tailor a response around what makes you different or better than your competitor. The third one is that way too many salespeople end their sales calls without asking for the order or at least suggesting a next step that moves the sales process forward. This is usually caused by a combination of some of the other mistakes that we said, but generally it's because they don't start the call with a good agenda. They don't ask the right questions. They can't summarize what happened. They can't tailor value. So when it comes time to close, they feel awkward. They sense that the customer or the prospect is not there, and they're going to give them a negative response if they try to close. So what they do is they just put it off. They'll say something like, why don't you think about it? I'll get back to you. I'll send you a PDF, or I'll send you this or that, and we'll talk in a couple weeks. And what that does is it just pushes it down the road and clogs up their follow-up system as opposed to just asking for the order. That's something that top performers do. They try to shrink the amount of follow-up they have to do by getting as much done as possible when they're meeting with or speaking with a prospect. And a lot of that comes down to, in terms of efficiency, of asking for the order. So if more companies would spend more time practicing with their people in these three basic areas, they're going to get better no matter what the sales process is. So if it's consultative selling, challenger selling, strategic selling, doesn't matter. If they can get better at these three key skills, which require a lot of practice, the kind of practice that sports teams do, where it's repetition, it's drills based, the sales manager's really working with them to get better. So if you really practice and rehearse and break these three mistakes, you're going to build a stronger sales team.